Good morning, everybody. We're really excited to have you join us for another session of our Managing Farm Risk webinar series. This week, we're going to be talking about marketing. And I will turn it over to Ariana to introduce herself, and then I'll introduce myself.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. And we're excited to do the marketing webinar. We are Jenna Ness, Ariana Torres, and Renee Wyatt, who's currently missing, but we're going to cover her content. Welcome to today's webinar. And if you have any question, please don't hesitate to use the chat option. And towards the end of the presentation, we're also going to have time for questions, and we would appreciate if you ask any question. Also, our contact information is there, and Jenna is going to introduce our funding sources, which is the next slide, and what are we doing this, and what is this part of.
Thank you, Ariana. And just a reminder that this material is based upon work supported by the USDA NIFA. So we greatly appreciate our funders for helping make this program series available to everyone. As a reminder, you've probably heard this before, but these webinars are kind of a subset of the 6 pillars of farm risk management certificate program that is currently being offered through Purdue University. So if you have an interest in doing this open enrollment program and getting a certificate, please register now at the link shown on the screen. It goes into more depth than what we're actually doing with this webinar, so we strongly encourage you to sign up. But as we mentioned today, the webinar is going to focus on marketing, and we're going to begin by discussing what is market, or what is a market. And a market is a set of actual and potential buyers for a program, so that's kind of like the broad overall term. So it's the actual and potential buyers. But your available market is a smaller group. Those are your consumers who are interested in your product, they have the income to buy the product, and have access to buy the product. And a lot of time we're really targeting that available market when we're developing our marketing plan. Just having consumers that are interested is not really enough to define the market. You really need to make sure that they have that income and the access to the product to really develop that marketing plan that's going to work for your business. And as you develop your marketing plan, you're going to start retaining loyal customers that will help make you successful. So another thing that we need to really define is the difference between marketing and selling. Marketing is more of a long-term concept, and this is where you are adapting and adjusting different facets of your business to meet the needs of those consumers who are interested, have the income, and access to your product to grow your business over time. So this is a long-term process. That's where you're changing things to support sales and making it more easy for those customers to buy your product. Selling is more short-term. It's those day-to-day activities that you're doing to get the sales and to have a positive cash flow. So once you understand what marketing is, we do need to define what your market is. And that's where we have this link between the sellers and the buyers. For the sellers, we talk about the 4 Ps. That's the product that you're going to sell, the price at which you're going to sell it, the place that you're going to have your product at, and what promotions you're going to do in order to get those sales. The buyers, though, they have their 4 Cs, which is the customer benefit, so they're able to see why they need to buy it. What is that cost going to be to the customer? Is it convenient to buy the item? And what's being communicated to them? So we really need to make sure that the 4 Ps align very nicely and link together to the buyer's 4 Cs to make a marketing plan work and be successful. Now, as you're developing your marketing plan, we need to realize that the whole idea of mass marketing, where you're just going to meet the needs of hundreds of people, is kind of moving away and not necessarily the trend that we're seeing. More businesses are moving towards what we call a segmented marketing, where we focus on a smaller group of audiences and use our resources to help promote and benefit our business. It seems to be more efficient and more effective when we go this route, and it enables marketers to notice changes in the segment and to respond to them more quickly because you're focusing in on a smaller market, not the whole state per se, and doing a mass marketing. So to go into more detail about this, I'm going to turn things over to Ariana so she can talk more about that segment in marketing.
Market segmentation is a very powerful tool because what you want to avoid is a strategy of shooting every bird that you see in the sky. It's basically trying to use your resources very efficiently. Market segmentation is a tool that it's used by a lot of medium, small businesses, but mostly large corporations. And it's basically understanding what is the market, the niche market that you want to target to. One example that I give is a lot of people eat tomatoes. Most people will eat tomatoes, but who are the ones who are going to buy it? So you're going to target people who are more likely to buy, and they're ready to buy. They're aware of that product that you're trying to sell, and they have access to it. So based on the first slide that we saw in the presentation. So there are ways to define, to segment your market. There's a lot of research about market segmentation and what are the market segments and market clusters for different products. So if you have access to that information, a quick Google search may help you. Another way to do it is by looking at who's walking through your door, who is buying online, who are the people, what are the characteristics that you can do. And a lot of the segmentation is going to go primarily around demographics. So for example, age. So is it people from 50 to 70? Is it people from 18 to 25? So kind of like Gen Z, millennial, baby boomers, Gen X. That's a good way to start. Then you can do also gender. Is it more men or female that are buying your products? Another way is location. Like Jenna was saying, is it the state? Is it internationally? Or is it a region, let's say the Midwest? But the most important way of segmenting a market is through psychographics. The psychographic factors are lifestyle or attitudes, a philosophy of life. In that case, what you want to do is try to understand. So if you're selling something that is new to the market, in the life cycle of this product is something that is innovative or doesn't exist, or people are not used to buy that, what you want to look is for people or customers, try to target a market segment with customers that are likely to buy new things. They like to try new things. And those are things that you can obtain through social media. And I'm going to touch a little bit about market and market access through social media, because one of the markets may be online markets. So when you define your market, you have to be able to define it. That market has to be accessible, actionable, ideally, and very importantly, it has to be profitable, and it has to provide growth opportunities. So I'm saying with growth, you don't want to target a market as 5 people in the whole world or 5 people in the country, but rather a size or the pie that you can actually have access to, and it's going to create some profits. And effective marketing is actually the ability of you to create these market segments and say, hey, customers that I'm going to target these, let's say marketing or promotion, are going to be women from 40 to 70 who have this certain education, who live in this zip code or this state or this country, who have these professions, and they like to go to farmers markets or like to try local foods and are willing to experiment with new flavors and then value cooking. That is your perfect market segmentation skill. And that's going to take you a while. So it's important to recognize that every customer is going to be part of a segment. So how do you target those segments? You're going to make every dollar that you invest in marketing more efficient and effective. So what are your customers need and want? And this is kind of what we're looking into the psychographic. So for example, there are needs and wants that come from you as a business owner, from the product as the thing that they're buying, and then from your business as an entity that they're doing business with. So for example, from you, examples, what they want is trust, transparency. And one of the things that happens is because people are making purchases guided by their values. So their values may be trust, transparency, local impact. It may be honesty. It may be any value that individuals tend to have. So the idea is that you align your values of your company and your mission and your vision with people that are valuing those things. But when we're making that into a product, products are, they have a very specific attributes. So for example, a lot of researchers have categorized attributes as search attributes, credence attributes, and experience attributes. So for example, safety, organic tend to be credence attributes, and those are attributes that you kind of have to use a label to convey those. But for example, price, size, color, those are search attributes that people are going to want to find, and these are things that people, customers, want from your product. Freshness, it's also another experience attribute that usually are measurable after the consumer taste. And that's why for a lot of marketing initiatives and strategies are related to tasting products or doing pilot product testing. And then there are things that you need to look into. Okay, so my business is going to provide certain value to the customers that are going to be from my entity to them. And this may be, it's going to be convenient. It may be near where my customer segment is. Again, we're going back to the values that we're talking about, and then what kind of packaging you need, pricing we want. And as you can see, there all these attributes from you, from your product, and from your business kind of are very related, but there are different aspects about the consumer's needs and wants. And then how do you operationalize that? How do you make that working? And that's when you have a very clear idea of what is your customer segment. You may actually be doing some little surveys or little interviews, or you may be doing some polls on social media. It's very common for businesses to do social media polls on Facebook, on Instagram, and ask your customers, what do they want? And basically exactly operationalize that. And then of course you do have to consider what your competitors offer and that try to differentiate from them. So what makes you different? It may be a price, you may be selling something cheaper or more expensive. You know, price conveys the value of a product. So sometimes pricing it too low, people are gonna think that products do not have any quality, but pricing it too high creates kind of status. Yet when you go too high also, you may be, customers may be thinking that you're taking advantage of it. So try to understand what are your strategies related to your competitors' strategies, and try to do that in a geographic zone. So what is your customer segment? And again, we always need to keep in mind, try to understand who are the people most likely to buy from us. And I'm going to talk, the next two sections are going to be about marketing for beginning farmers and for more experienced farmers. There are some slides that are going to overlap because there are some things that apply for both. So I'm going to tell you where, when we're going to skip some slides, because basically I'm going to try to cover at the beginning, whether you're starting your farm or your agribusiness or any agritourism operation, what you want to understand is marketing may have some differences for beginners or for experience. However, most strategies can be more applicable depending on where you are located and how ready you are to embark on marketing. So there are five very specific things that you can do to find new markets. So let's say you started your business and you don't know where to start. So the first thing, and I'm going to go through each of them, is connect with farmers, any other buyer that you may be targeting, retailers, institutions. Then you're going to create a list of potential markets. You want to identify your strengths and limitations, or if you have done a SWOT analysis. A SWOT analysis stands for strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. That's a great tool to also do marketing for your business. So you don't need to identify what are yours and what are your markets, and try to see, okay, where are the opportunities that I need to leverage on, and then decide on the market. Next slide, please. So how do you connect with markets? One of the best ideas, you're starting your business and you want to understand, okay, where do I start selling? You may be the best farmer in the world, but if you don't have a market, your profitability is gonna most likely suffer. You can produce the best bread, the best coffee, the best muffins, whatever you want. But if you don't identify your market, again, going back to market segmentation, you're gonna struggle. So one of the first things is connect with people. There are many associations. Let's say you're a farmer. There are many farmer networks or organizations that you may want to look into. So for example, Market Maker is a directory of buyers, growers, processors, retailers, and wholesalers. So if you go to Market Maker and Food Market Maker, you Google that, you're gonna find a bunch of potential customers for your area. It's more for retailers, wholesalers, restaurants, and processors. But let's say you want to create your CSA and you want to partner with another farmer, and let's say you don't grow livestock, but you want to offer livestock to your CSA. You can do is you can connect through Market Maker with livestock producers and provide that for your CSA. You can also look for the AMF, USDA, so the U.S. Department of Agriculture has a program, and it has different local agriculture market programs. And there's a little bit of a database of who are the organizations working to develop local markets. If you're a young farmer, there's a National Young Farmer Coalition, and several states have their own. But the idea behind it is try to connect as much as you can with people, because one of the best recipes for success is networking, especially if you're starting. And you'll know that if you have more of an experience with your business. The idea is you're gonna find people who want to buy your produce. Examples of things you can do: go to conferences, trade shows, farmer field days. For example, at Purdue, we have the Small Farm Field Day. If you Google that information or you send me an email, I can send you that information. You can connect with retailers, restaurant managers. Think about broader potential customers. And one of the things that we have found very effective is to go to farmers markets. Farmers markets, let's say you're gonna start selling at the farmers markets, you're gonna find a lot of these retailers, restaurant managers, hotel operators that are gonna try to buy from you. And then from them, you can start a relationship and a network. And then can you start your own CSA? Do you need to rely on a farmer's market? Or can you actually start with a local CSA, community-based, and then transition into online sales? Next slide, please. So what is the information? Let's say you want to start understanding what are your markets like. So what is the information that you want to understand is, first, who is purchasing at that market? So if you're trying to sell to a retailer, it's very much worth it to go and look around and see who are the people who are buying from them, because these are your market segments, right? How much they buy and how do they get there? What is the quality of products that you need, the presentation, the packaging, the label that it's offered, but also what is the one that the customers are wanting? What quantity is required? You can ask retailers, do they want packages of 100 pounds? Do they want smaller packages, kind of bulk, or more like a retail? You need to understand how frequently and how the demand changes across seasons. So if you're trying to sell to restaurants, you might want to ask all these questions, because what happens is you need to plan your planting or your growing season ahead of time. You want to understand what are the trends in demand. And this can be very simple by asking your potential customers, saying, what are the things that you are expecting in terms of delivery, quality, product, labeling, etc. You might want to understand if there are new market opportunities. For example, ethnic foods, it's an example, protein that is plant-based, or nutrient-dense foods. Think about what are the things or demand and consumer consumption. What are the things that they're looking for? what are the value added preferences by customers and consumers? And these customers may be a little bit different than consumers, but when I'm talking about value added, I'm talking about, is there any processing? Do they want products to be in customer ready portions? Do they want things dried to make soups? Is there any processor looking for dried spices? Those are the things that as a farmer or as an agribusiness owner, you can actually start thinking about what are the simple technologies that you can add to differentiate your products so you add value. Because when you add value to it, you're adding also a price premium and for profitability in that case. Is there any opportunity for branding and differentiation? So for example, right now, a lot of terminology in the agricultural world is regenerative agriculture. What does that mean? What does sustainability mean? For some people, sustainability may mean something that is sustainable is, okay, I am maintaining or improving the quality of my soil. But for a customer, it may be low chemical, pesticide free. So thinking about what is the overlap between what you're trying to do and what your customers and your buyers want. You can look into pricing. Ideally, you're gonna have a pricing strategy, and I'm gonna get there later about how do you best price your products. What are the regulations? And then is there any unreliable business that your potential buyers have that you can share that pie with or the market pie with? And are there cultural barriers? And for example, is there any co-op, for example, that is going to prefer a women, young or veteran farming participation? So think about what are the opportunities for the bigger sense. And one of the best ways to do this is face-to-face conversation, because that's a way that you can survey a market opportunity. Also another way is just looking around. When you go to the farmer's market, think about what are the things being offered and what are the things that you can actually offer that have not been served in that market. Next slide, please. So you need to identify what are your strengths and limitations. If you've done a SWOT analysis, this is quite easy. But for example, what is your profitability, right? So what is your priority? Is it profitability? So if you want to be profitable or you want to feed your community and employ people, what are the skills that you have that may be your strength, but what are the skills that you don't have that you're limited to? So for example, you may not know anything about regenerative agriculture. Is there anything that you need to acquire or value added? Is any technology? Do you need to access inputs? And right now we know that fertilizer prices are very expensive. A lot of chemicals are very expensive. In general, a lot of things are expensive. So what are the things that you can use through sustainable practices or organic practices to lower the access to inputs or the need for inputs? What are the resources that you may have? So for example, you may have found a market that wants X amount of produce, but you cannot produce that. So you don't have the land to produce that. Can you partner with other farmers to supply to that buyer? What is your attitude towards risk and change? Because one of the things is when you're going to survey the market, when you're going to contact these buyers, you're gonna probably realize that what you were thinking you wanna grow or you wanna sell, maybe is slightly different of what it's needed in the market. Or you may have to adopt some things. You may have to increase cover crops or no-till. Whatever you may need to know is you need to understand, am I willing to do that? And as I was saying before, can you cooperate and collaborate with partners, suppliers, and buyers? What are the opportunities that exist? And those may come from farmer field days or any farmer conference that you may wanna attend to. Next slide, please. Number 4 is to compare markets with strengths and limitations. So you already identify yours and then try to find what are the markets desires, wants, and needs. Because what you want to do is become the preferred supplier. And the only way to do that is understanding what are the extra benefits that you can offer to those potential customers. What are the value added, differentiated strategies that actually are going to be profitable? And you want to cross check that with what is the demand or what is the market demand wanted? Is the market demanding for costs, or are they demanding quality in delivery, or are they looking into timing, delivery volume? So what are the things that are priorities? And then what are the required versus the preferred characteristics or strategies that are needed by your buyers? And as I was saying before, are you willing to change? Do you have the time, skill, resources to do that? And again, cooperating with farmers to bulk up volume may not be a bad idea. So ultimately, when you're looking into who is the end user, which is the consumer or shopper, what exactly do they want? And a lot of visual recognition of a market is important, and it's actually called market research stats. Next slide. And based on that, you're going to decide for the best market. But ideally, you're going to have a few markets that their demand with your willingness and ability to provide that overlaps. You may be wanting to look into alternative crops that you may have to grow. One of the things that I recommend growers and any business owner, matter of fact, is diversify markets. Having a diverse portfolio of markets is going to help you build resilience, but also lower those price variations that are in agriculture are so common. So you may be thinking, well, I have a fresh retail market. Can you start selling to wholesale? Or can you sell to restaurants, school districts, anyone in the service industry? And then think about the cash flow. Maybe a market is going to buy all the volume or most of the volume of your production, but I think it's important to think about, when are they going to pay me? Is there going to be a healthy cash flow? So if, for example, we know that cash flow can be the number one factor creating business owner stress and actually impacting business failure. So think about, what are the sources of cash that can provide liquid money to cover any disaster? And the last thing is, you know that you did that analysis. What are the labels that you need? So you did some visual recognition of competitors and what customers are buying. Use labeling. Labels are the best strategy to convey your values, your farm story, and try to overlap with what your customers want. Next slide. The last thing I want to talk about, or actually on one of the last things, is the pricing strategy. Ideally, you have determined your break-even price, but I know that realistically that's boring. I know accounting is boring, but the idea is you need to understand each product, how many units you need to sell to cover all your costs, or what is the minimum price you need to sell at, depending on the yield that you're expecting. And for that pricing strategy, you want to price it above that break-even price, because any penny above that break-even price or break-even yield made is going to directly cover or increase your profitability. So there are different strategies that can be adopted depending on what are your goals. So if you're starting, you want to gain market share. You want to actually gain some market share. If you have some time that you've been operating, you probably want to retain some customers, so you can adopt different pricing strategies for different products, or you just want to remain profitable. Depending on your customers, your pricing strategy is also going to change. So for example, if you have customers that are Gen Z, so these are the youngest individuals that are making purchases for the market, they may not have well-established jobs, so prices may not be as high versus baby boomers that are people that are retired. They have more disposable income. What are their values, lifestyle? We know that also people that live in urban areas tend to pay more for anything versus rural and then suburban is actually a lot higher. And are they willing to pay a price premium? The last part before you consider your pricing method is you need to understand what are your competitors charging for, and are they having similar products, or are they better or worse? And there are different pricing strategies. So for example, cost plus is basically like I was saying in number one. You're covering your break-even price. Anything you add a percentage that is going to directly increase your profitability. That's the plus portion. Then you have a subscription where you have, it's like a CSA, where you have a charge that is going to happen periodically. And for example, that's very convenient. I've seen cut flower subscriptions or CSAs that are very successful. The psychological price is basically charging something and then adding the 0.99, because in the minds of a consumer, $4.99 is cheaper, or $4.91 is cheaper than $5. And maybe those 9 cents are going to make a big deal for your business. Skimming and penetration are basically those two opposite strategies. Skimming is actually you're starting with a higher price, and what you're going to do is going to decrease price as demand lowers. So the higher price is going to give a perception of a high quality product. Penetration is the opposite. You start lower price, and then as you gain market, you start increasing. With both of them, you have to be very careful, because you don't want to give the message to your consumers that you're either taking advantage or you took advantage at the beginning. The loss leader, it's a very interesting strategy. And actually, I was listening to the news and how, I don't know if you know Costco, but Costco is selling rotisserie chicken below cost price. And that's a loss leader strategy. Basically, what they're doing is they're having products, or you can do that, is having certain products that you're going to sell them at break even or slightly lower than that. So that loss leader product is a very demanded product that people want, but it's going to make your customers come to your store and buy more. So it's the attraction power of having a product that is cheap, but then they're going to buy more stuff from you. And then the bundling is basically putting different crops, different products together. Next slide, please. And then the last thing about marketing for beginning farmers is advertising, because as Jenna was saying, marketing is anything from any process that adds value to the end user or the customer. So advertising is the last part of adding that value. And then advertising and publicity are two very different things. Publicity are things that you can do that you're not gonna pay for. So for example, you're posting on Facebook, you're posting on Instagram or Twitter. Advertising is things that you pay for. So if you're advertising on Facebook, or you're boosting posts or doing Google ads, then that is advertising. Next slide, please. And then you can do that with a low budget. I covered a lot of things in the last webinar, but I think it's important to talk about, you can use a very effective marketing and advertising strategy through social media. And the idea is show what your passion is and try to convey that to consumers, tell your story, and then use the tools that social media can offer to you. Next slide, please. Things that you can do is you can click on all of them, but basically is post photos, connect, share what you care for, post videos, advertise with other businesses, and try to include material that it's actually going to attract. If you're in agriculture, you have the best quality for taking photos and the most beautiful things that you can take photos of: landscape, insects, products, etc. Try to share those and try to convey what is the DNA of your business. Next slide, please. So then the last section that I'm going to talk about is marketing for experienced farmers. One of the things that are different is the diversification of market. I talked briefly about it in the previous section, but if you're an experienced farmer, you want to diversify your markets to increase your resilience. There is inflation right now, there are price changing, inputs have increased tremendously. So the best thing you can do is try to have different markets that is going to help you build a buffer in case something happens. So for example, if there are environmental resources right now, fertilizers are very expensive. You can also create more stable financial ecosystems. You can spread the risk. You may be able to find a very profitable niche market you were not aware of. You can create new industries based on agriculture. So for example, if you were just a grower and then you want to start making soups, you can start drying some of your produce, create a partner in business or a new business, and then having a very direct impact on your rural community. And you can aid the domestic economy. Ideally, what you want to target is the economy of scope. So what happens is when you are diversifying markets, you may also be diversifying your business in itself, and you're using all those things to get a bigger share of the market, to be more profitable and to be more resilient. Next slide. So how can you diversify? Diversifying markets and diversifying production, or what we call diversifying horizontally and vertically, are very well connected. So things that you can do, if you're a farmer, you can add legumes to a rotation, and that's going to reduce the need of nitrogen. You can rotate crops. So for example, add alfalfa, clover, grains. That's going to reduce pest problems. But it also, if you include any legume, you may increase nitrogen fixation into the soil, and that has been shown to reduce the need for nitrogen and fertilizers. Grow crops that have moisture needs at different times. So we know that right now weather is very variable. Right now in Indiana, it's actually we're going through several heat waves. So try to understand how different crops reacting to different moisture needs. You can distribute labor and equipment more smoothly through the year if you have different diversification. So if you're doing some value added, drying, cutting, freezing, canning, anything that you can do, you can distribute labor, because labor availability is also another big issue. Tell the story of your farm. More of it was related to the social media. If you can process, package, and sell new products that may be yours or maybe supply from other farmers, but try to think about what are the different packaging and labeling things. Added value, as I said before, connect, and have a marketing plan. So the marketing plan that we talked about, the customers, trying to understand how they purchase, what are their values and their willingness to pay. And lastly, you can actually apply for grants for diversified agriculture. As I said before, the USDA has different local sustainability grants that farmers can access to. So if you go to the USDA Agricultural Marketing Service, you're gonna find different grant opportunities for growers who try to diversify either crops, production, value added, or markets. Next slide, please. And this is kind of like, if you're diversifying markets and you're adding new markets, you need to get your pricing very, very well understood. So this triangle that I'm showing you to the left is the variable cost of unit, and that unit may be a bushel of tomatoes, or that unit may be 1 pound of tomatoes. What are the variable things? What are the costs that you're going to incur as production crops? These, for example, may be fertilizer, irrigation, labor, seeds. If you're having trellis tomatoes, anything that you have to add as you add the production. But then you also have fixed costs, right? And those fixed costs are things that you're going to incur whether you are growing those tomatoes or not. If you're renting land, if you're paying equipment, those are things that you have to incur regardless of production. And those two are going to add to the minimum price that you're going to charge for. That's a break-even price. Anything above that, that tip of that pyramid, is your profit margin. And that's where you want to place, which is that range is exactly what is on the right-hand side. It's a price floor, which is the break-even price, and the price ceiling, which is what is the maximum that the market will bear. And anything in between is going to influence what is the image of the product that you're selling compared to what customers are buying and what competitors are offering. Next slide, please. So these I went through. I'm not gonna go again because I already went through with the beginning farmer section. Next slide. Again, advertising is very important, whether you're beginning or experienced. You always want to be in the minds of the customers, because if not, other people are 2 seconds on a website away from you. Next slide. Again, things that you can do, you can go ahead, another slide, and things that you can post. And I share a lot. If you want to know more in depth about this, go to our previous webinar on social media marketing. But this is just a refresher of social media is critical, especially for small businesses. Next slide, please. And Jenna's going to go next. But again, I'm going to stick here until the end for any questions that you guys may have.
Thank you, Ariana. So now we're going to kind of continue our marketing discussion by talking about how do we communicate that marketing plan that we develop to others, and who do we communicate it to? And so in essence, at this point, you've already decided on your 4 Ps, your product, your price, your place, and your promotion. And it's time to think, how am I going to put that marketing plan in action and make it work for my business? And you may think, okay, it's simple. I've developed my marketing plan and it's going to work, but you really have to still continue to put in time and effort into that plan. Because you want to make sure that you are sharing it with others and that your staff understands it, because there may be individuals that work for your farm or your agribusiness that serve in a managerial role. And as you're communicating your plan, saying, hey, this is what I really think is our target audience, they may work in a different part of your business and can speak up and say, no, you've got this other segment that you really need to target. And so by incorporating their ideas and sharing yours, you're able to continue to build and update that marketing plan to best suit your farm or agribusiness, because you're able to adjust for all those minute details that you may have missed or overlooked. Another reason to explain your marketing plan to your managerial staff is because you may have certain parts of your plan that you really want to take place, and you want to make sure that they're able to fulfill your wishes that you developed in the plan. So one of the examples I think about this is with an orchard. Maybe you grow apples and your plan is to make sure that around Thanksgiving, you really highlight that, hey, we still have apples on the trees, come get them, make apple pie for your family. And if you don't communicate that your plan is to really target those apple pie bakers, then your managerial staff may not be able to make adjustments to how they're communicating your wishes because they weren't aware of your plan. So again, taking a few minutes, explaining your plan to your managerial staff, getting their input can really help develop that plan a step further and make sure that it's being implemented in the fashion that you wish. So, I said managerial staff, but it even goes down to anyone in your business that interacts with customers. Because part of your plan probably relates to your values and the standards and expectations that you have for customer service. So if you have parts of that that's in your plan, you need to make sure that every individual that works for you and is going to be interacting with a customer knows what your customer service standards are, knows what you expect, so they can make sure that they're upholding your marketing plan to the best of their ability. If you don't tell them what you expect them to do and set those standards and expectations, you may have an employee that interacts with customers that does the complete opposite, and that's going to be an issue and going to hinder your business in the long run. And we see that a lot right now, where things aren't always getting communicated to all employees. And unfortunately, when we're in this day and age where social media is king, it's kind of like if someone gets a bad experience with customer service, they're not afraid to post about it, and it may hurt you in the long run and cause you sales just because you didn't take that extra time to communicate what your standards and expectations were and how it impacts your marketing plan. Now, not only do you need to explain your marketing plan with those inside your business in terms of your managerial staff and anyone that interacts with your customers, you also need to explain your marketing plan with some of the individuals outside your business, especially those that are financial professionals or legal professionals. Your financial professionals will review your plan and may use some of the details in it to help you either get a loan or tell you, hey, something's not working and you need to make adjustments. And so it's really good that if you bring your marketing plan to the different professionals, get their insight, they can help you improve it and enhance it to best suit your needs to see your business go even further and do a better job at reaching your ultimate goal of being successful. One thing to keep in mind with the marketing plan, as I've kind of hinted at over the last few slides, it is a working document. And it is going to guide and direct your farm and small business. But because it is a working document, you always need to refer back to it when you have questions, when you have concerns, when you need to make adjustments because you're realizing there's another niche market that you can head towards. So constantly take time to review your marketing plan, make updates, and still communicate those updates to the important parties within your small farm and agribusiness so you can be successful and have a great business that is able to be passed on for generations if you would like. So as we wrap up today's presentation, again, I want to remind you about our 6 pillars of farm risk management certificate program. It is all online. We have open enrollment until November of 2022. We encourage you to sign up for that. There is a cost associated with it, but it goes into each one of these sessions more in depth so that you can increase your knowledge and help your business be successful. So please consider signing up for it. Again, we want to acknowledge our funders for this program with USDA and NIFA. We greatly appreciate their support. But we are going to open the floor up for any questions that anyone may have. So please type them in the chat so that we can answer those and make sure that you have the best clarification of any of these topics that we talked about as it relates to marketing.
We can give a couple of minutes for any chat questions. We are always also available via email. If you have any question and you're thinking about any question in the future, and we'll be more than happy to answer those later. But yeah. And again, a lot of these topics are, how do you avoid risk, or how do you manage risk? How do you avoid disasters impacting your profitability? And a lot of businesses are operating without a marketing plan, without diversifying markets, and they're successful. But we also have seen a lot of businesses struggle because the weather is changing, the markets or the customers are changing demand, or market trends are changing, or inputs are increasing in price. So the idea to avoid any risk and have a contingency plan is providing some marketing information that can give you tools. Maybe you don't need them, or maybe you know someone who does need them. So also feel free to share links to our webinars to anybody, because they're there for anybody to see. They're recorded.
Well, we've not seen any questions in the chat, but we do appreciate you taking time out of your day to participate with us, to participate in all the different webinars we've been offering. I think there's one more left in the series, so please, if there is, log on next week, because I know that group would love to interact with you and help you be more prepared for those risky situations like Ariana was talking about. But thank you guys, and again, feel free to reach out to either of us via email if you have questions.
Thank you. Have a good day.